Hi everyone, Paul Chapman from the global IBM Power Modernisation team here. Thanks for watching this replay with Donn, Bullock and myself presenting Enterprise Hybrid Cloud, PowerPilot and beyond at the IBM TechXchange in Las Vegas, September 2023. The presentation is split into 4 chapters. We start by introducing Tectrade, part of the CSI group. Then I'll walk through the Hybrid Cloud pilot from 2022, followed by what we are delivering as part of Phase 2 now in 2023. Finally, we have a Q&A session to end.
Is wearing a tie but has a pocket square. I am, in fact, that only person at this event. Thanks to Paul for inviting me. Thanks to for you for attending. I really do appreciate it. As Paul mentioned, my name is Donn Bullock. I'm the Strategic Client Director at Tectrade. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I've worked for 4 resellers, 3 OEMs, 2 software companies, and a distributor. I had the privilege of working at IBM in the IBM Power team as a worldwide product manager for the IBM Power Blade. So really enjoyed my time there and have really enjoyed having the privilege of being able to come and work at Tectrade. Let me explain a little bit about the relationship between Tectrade, CSI, and IBM. So CSI is a UK headquarters company based in Birmingham, UK. Tectrade is the US business for CSI, headquartered out of Raleigh, North Carolina. This sexy accent that you hear is in fact given to me by my mama. And I'm grateful to have the chance to work with a phenomenal team based in Raleigh. We are focused on IBM Power, IBM Storage, and Managed Services. Tectrade CSI at its core is a managed services company. We focus primarily on helping companies who lack skills, but who still have power resident in their businesses to decide what they want to do with it. Many times they want to go to the cloud, they want to maintain those systems on premises, or they decide that they need some help in what they want to do in their cloud journey. So we help them as it pertains to that component. In addition, we then work with them on all the things we're going to talk about at this conference, whether it's cybersecurity, resiliency, availability, scaling those systems, etc., and of course that journey to the cloud, whether it's as it pertains to public cloud or at what we're going to talk about today in terms of hybrid cloud. We look at some of the distinguishing characteristics of CSI. We look at the number of customers that we have, look at the number of deployments that we've managed, we look at the amount of data that we manage, we look at the global footprint of the company, we look at the 24/7 scalability and the NOC that we have that really gives our customers a measure of confidence relative to our capabilities. This year is in fact the 40th anniversary of CSI as an entity. And we have been enjoying quite a bit internally on sharing stories and talking about the things that we've done in the past, but even more importantly, setting the company up relative to our partnerships, especially in our partnership with our #1 partner, IBM. And therein really lies the opportunity. What is Tectrade doing to help our customers relative to their IBM journey? And how can we leverage our expertise and our experience for their benefit? And that's the thing that we're really are focusing on today. Go ahead and hit me with that next slide, please. Thank you. See, because I'm wearing the tie and have the pocket square, I have no credibility whatsoever, which is why Paul is going to do most of the talking and why he maintains the clicker. All right, this is my last slide. We focus on really 3 things: IBM Power, the protection of the data that we have, and how we provision workloads internally. IBM Power is obvious. The protection, we combine the focus on the workloads and data with how we protect that customer's environment relative to where they want to be, whether it's on premises or whether it's in combination with a public environment to create that hybrid cloud environment, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. And then how do we provision that workload, whether again it's in a hybrid cloud environment, which most customers are gravitating towards, or whether it's in partnership with a customer's existing relationship with AWS or Azure. Tectrade uniquely has its own Power Cloud. So in addition to partnering with IBM as a cloud partner of IBM Cloud and IBM Power Cloud vis-a-vis Power BS, Tectrade has its own Power Cloud. And so we can help customers relative to their journey as it pertains to being able to target specific data centers and the location of those data centers, because even we haven't figured out how to break the laws of physics yet. And putting those workloads as close as possible to existing data centers that they might have. So therein lies the advantage of working with Tectrade and CSI, and we're very grateful to have you here today, and look forward to having conversations with you. And of course, we look forward to hearing more from Paul as he talks about the awesome things that we're doing with hybrid clouds, specifically as it pertains to the lab. So with that, my colleague, Paul Chapman.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Don. Can everybody hear me okay? Don't need to bother with the mic then, that's good. I've got one hand free in that case. So the piece that I'll cover off now is actually the Enterprise Hybrid Cloud Pilot. And this really kicked off about 2 years ago, maybe just a little bit longer than 2 years ago. I was working with one of CSI's technical pre-sales architects. I've known him for many years, but I was talking to him about OpenShift and more modern technologies coming onto the Power Platform. And as part of that, over the course of Q4 of that year, he was asking me more and more questions about OpenShift. And it was covering 3 different opportunities, HCL commerce, as way of a customer that was updating and moving to a container-based solution. There was another customer that was sort of modernising IBM I with containers alongside it. And there was also a cloud-native customer that actually had a traditional application and workload, very large, running and being serviced by CSI, very happy with Power, had problems, they moved to Power, they've been happy there for decades since, but their development team were actually moving out into public cloud. And they were looking and asking questions about, well, actually, could we do the same thing, get the same benefits, but on OpenShift, on Power, because they could see the benefits from that. Now, from the outcome of that, and through the discussions that we had, that actually led to the introduction through the head of marketing and the head of cloud team. So the head of cloud, who was an ex-Gartner employee, actually then asked me to do a webinar for their finance customers on application modernisation. So as part of that, and the replay was put on YouTube, so that's available, it's just under an hour slot on that. We talk about modernising monolithic applications and Power Platform, how that can be done, and then I demonstrate. So we on that YouTube, we have a Power server with DB2, the traditional backend. We have Web3 application server with a middleware and the front end. And what we do, we move OpenShift onto the same physical server, and we modernise the application with a new front end. Now, in my thoughts, that kind of makes it pretty, and okay, you modernise it, but the real benefits for the developers were the agility. Okay, they were getting the same benefits that they would get in public cloud, but they were getting it on premise on their well-loved Power systems. The other benefit, of course, is that they weren't doing anything to the existing platform. DB2 was there, it was running the service very well for a long time, WAS was very good, so they just put a connector block in front to give them additional benefits without a long time period needed to make changes. Now, moving on from that, we use a multi-cloud manager, and multi-cloud manager allowed us to manage both containers and virtual machines, or x86 virtual machines and Power LPARs, but also connect it to AWS and Microsoft Azure and IBM Cloud. So as part of that demonstration, I connect new services without any downtime to the customers. It's banking application, so it gets a refreshed front end, then we connect new services through 3 different public clouds, including an IBM Chapman. Off the back of that, which went very, very well, I was then asked to do another session for a distributor in the States, and also with Tectrade. So that went very well, and it was around about this time. So that was about May and June time. Around about that time, we were actually refreshing and updating Multi-Cloud Manager. So that was to become Watson for AIOps, and the core components of that would be information automation and management. So that core functionality moved from Multi-Cloud Manager into Watson for AIOps, and still allowed us to manage virtual machines and containers on x86 and Power. So along with that, then we have Red Hat Advanced Cluster Manager to allow us to actually manage all containers on x86 or Power, on public or on-prem. And we had the new joiners, so we had the big names now, Instana and Turbonomic, for monitoring infrastructure and applications, and also optimizing all of that. So we were in a transition. We just done the webinar. We'd highlighted what we could do with Multi-Cloud Manager. We'd highlighted that we could provide zero downtime by adding new services to multi-clouds and still retaining the Power platform on premises, often required for security and regulatory purposes. But what we did was we put a working group together from key people from IBM, and the business, and also the senior leadership team within the CSI group, all about application modernisation and hybrid cloud. They had, as it happened, set up a project to go and look at that at the time. So we entered into a formal working group to collaborate on that. And as part of that, we brought people in. Manoj was presenting earlier today with Jay Carman, the developer on some of this tech. So we would bring in the developers and key SMEs to go through deep dives and demonstrations to show CSI what was truly possible with Power. Yeah, pretty much cover that. So that went from the webinar in May and June through to maybe a 3-month period going through the deep dives and the working group. And then in Q4, I was speaking with the head of cloud services and said, well, what we really want to do is to build this for you. Let's build it so that you have the capability to run for yourself, but also to demonstrate to your customers. And that was great. We started working through, but with anything, research and development, new things, it costs time and money, etc. It takes time, etc. So it's probably about a 3-month period before we agreed on the process and that we would work together to try and build something like this. So officially the pilot kicked off in January, but traditionally things go a bit slow in January because it's the start of a new year, there's no budgets, everybody's gone on holiday after Christmas, etc. So I would say, you know, the first 3 months, January through February, we were formulating it. I'd say it really kicked off in the April timeframe. And as it happened, around about this time, our Power offering management team were actually considering bundling all of these products together into a software bundle. And as part of that, they were looking for feedback from community and people like CSI. So I rummaged around and secured a team of global experts from Instana. Instana had just been with IBM for about 6 months at the time, along with Turbonomic. So we teamed directly with Instana and Turbonomic, and also got skills transfer from them from our lab services team. And then we identified key people from IBM's lab services team to work with CSI to build this out, and also to provide them skills transfers so that we could scale and offer this at scale for our customers. So with that in mind, I said 6 months prior to that, CSI were actually running a project to research and identify what they should do themselves for a cloud management platform. So that was one goal for CSI. They also wanted to make this as an offering to sell to customers, so when they resell Power Systems, that they could offer this service to them so that they could help them modernise. And also, it was always key there, the possibilities of actually offering it as a service as well. So they were the 3 key points that we were looking at to fulfil. Now, the goals I summarised really. The goals were to simplify the deployment of all of this, whether it be x86 or whether it be Power, whether it be virtual machines or containers or LPARs or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, you want that cloud management platform to be able to simplify the deployment of that. But also, when we start spreading things out and looking at wider spectrums, then we need to monitor all of that too. Now, what we find sometimes is that the key teams that are working on the infrastructure layer don't actually understand the software layer or the application model so well as well. So we wanted to really monitor the infrastructure and the application layers. And also to offer analysis and optimization. So I've worked on many large projects where a business case has been to, okay, well, if you refresh and you go to the Power server, then you can do more with less, which we always do. But I've seen a lot of projects when they start plan to do that, and then when they transition, they don't actually resize it properly, or it takes a man effort to go in and resize things. Maybe it's discussions with line of business to actually, you know, they say, well, I've actually bought 10 cores, why should I let you take it down to 5? Well, because they're 3 times more powerful, for instance. So we really wanted to put something in there that would actually take care of that and make that problem go away for us. And again, whether that be on-premise or public cloud. CSI had a desire to grow much more in public cloud space. And I see that actually for Power to be a very good thing, because it brings more opportunity for us. So we cherry-picked, if you like, the key lab services team. So we had people in the States come over for Instana, well, it was all remote, but for Instana and Turbonomic. Watson for AI Ops, Jay Carman helped us out, that Manoj works with an awful lot. And we had a local team in the UK to work with CSI, offering shadowing so that CSI techs could actually watch it being built and created, etc. So the key components we've just seen on the diagram on the previous slide, but Red Hat Advanced Cluster Manager really allows the management of containers and OpenShift clusters wherever they are. It makes updates far easier, it provides some governance, and whether that's x86 or whether it's Power or IBM Cloud or Azure or wherever, it helps us out there. So that's the sole purpose of RHACM. Instana brings along with it the monitoring of the infrastructure itself, whether it be public or private clouds, and also on the application side, and that's ever growing. Several customers, or all customers, are always coming to me and saying, okay. And we actively look for feedback with IBM I and other activities of what we can actually add into that. So we're often running sort of early adoption routes, or looking for collaboration and feedback to enhance its capabilities there. As I said earlier on, I do see a lot of managed service providers actually see this as very key, because if they're actually out talking to new customers and they understand the Power infrastructure, or maybe not the x86 or the applications that come along with it, then Instana can actually take the snapshot and actually give them that information, allowing them to size and to price accordingly for onboarding those applications. In the same way, Turbonomic is then able to look at what they've already got and say, okay, well, this is what you have today, but if we were able to resize it or move the workloads around onto different servers, then it would look like this, and that would save customer money. So from an MSP perspective, it's very key and valuable in talking to new customers. And like CSI, people talking to cloud that have maybe been into cloud and they're seeing cost and economics rising all the time, then this is a real opportunity to go and see them and say, okay, this is what it looks like today. If we were to move it into CSI cloud, it would look like this. And of course, in the Power frame, we can also say, and actually, if you were moving that on the Power, then it would look like a quarter of the size of that. So there's lots and lots of interest. I've worked with several people on that the last year or two. So the installation landscape, now this is something that's changing, and as I say, IT and all this kind of technology is ever changing, it never stands still. OpenShift containers, so we actually built out as part of this an OpenShift cluster on the Power servers sitting inside CSI data centers. We also installed it on VMware with x86 inside CSI, and we also installed it on Microsoft Azure on x86 and IBM Power Virtual Server, so that was Power in IBM's cloud, so multiple OpenShift clusters. They were all managed with Red Hat Advanced Cluster Manager, which obviously simplifies that management and was part of the deep dives and the demonstrations that we'd done the year before. Watson for AI Ops, as I said, that was really technology that came out of the previous technology that CSI had used and put into production for many customers and ISVs. That was managing virtual machines and LPARs, x86 and Power, hybrid cloud, so wherever it resided. We also had, obviously, LPARs on the Power servers on premise and in Power Virtual Server, along with virtual machines on x86, CSI, and in Microsoft Azure, etc. So quite a wide span of technologies, all simplifying the management through RHACM and Watson for AI Ops. So Instana and Turbonomic, I mentioned before. The point I wanted to get across here where some of it was installed. So RHACM was installed on the Power OpenShift cluster that was available at the time, so we put that on Power. And Watson for AI Ops, that was also installed on the Power OpenShift cluster. Moving on from that.
Just a question, Jacob.
Yeah, hi.
Is there any difference if you'd installed RHACM on the x86 in terms of capability?
Manoj will correct me if I'm wrong, but no functional difference. Sizing would typically be different because power would be able to consolidate and be more performant, etc. But no. Moving on though, at that point in time, and I think in IT everything's a point in time because as I say it's always changing. At that point in time, Instana and Turbonomic you could only install on x86. We could fully manage power. So Instana, we had the choice of installing it in a container or in a virtual machine, and we gave that choice to CSI. We opted to install it in virtual machines on x86. But as I say, that was actually managing the applications and infrastructure on hybrid cloud everywhere. That has moved on, and I'll cover that a little bit later on. Turbonomic, again, that was installed on x86 and could automatically optimize the sizing of everything, x86 and power containers and x86 virtual machines. At that point in time, we were in a stepping stone. We couldn't actually manage power VM. We couldn't manage LPARs on power, only containers. Turbonomic did do that maybe 5-6 years ago, and there was a little spot in the middle where they stopped. Myself, Joe Cropper, several others, Manoj too, I'm sure, works with the teams, and we delivered that at the end of last year. So that is now available to us as well. So, the pilot, as I say, in my mind I was trying to start it in January. In reality it really kicks off in April. There was lots of holiday periods and there was a lot of people involved, so mixing it around. So we actually ran a handover at the end of August. So we have the replay of the handover, and by that we had lab services come in and bring all the key senior stakeholders and sponsors with CSI and took them through all of those different components. As part of that, our lab services team created an install guide. Now obviously all these separate components are all documented in IBM document and everywhere else. The long version, so he did like your crib sheets. Certainly when I was a consultant, I'd read the book and then I'd make the notes to go and follow. So we created that document and shared that with CSI. So this, many of the slides that I'm walking you through on the pilot here are actually, they're not slides that I created for today, they're actually the slides that I created in between June and September of the pilot itself, and I did it really to maintain documentation through that period. This document, this slide, if you like, was what I was trying to use to show the senior stakeholders at CSI within IBM where we were, what was read, what was actually up and running already, what needed to be done, what blockers there were. From time to time, networking issues would come up and we'd need to bring in specialists or maybe get the IBM specialist to talk to the CSI specialist. Networks are always different. You can see this is where we got to at the end. Now, I felt that the way depicting this was to have a public cloud on the right-hand side, a private cloud on the left, then splitting that up between x86 and power, if you like, and then just the core components down the left-hand side. But as I say, it was really there to highlight to the powers that be where we needed to apply focus in different areas to make sure that the delivery stayed on schedule. And again, I'd run the meeting every Monday, and then maybe from time to time we'd run a monthly catch-up for more senior people. So I didn't mention, but originally the power team was going to deliver everything. But before we kicked it off, we decided that we'd run it in 2 phases. The first phase would be, in my way of thinking, I think of a SAP basis ready. So we'd get the infrastructure in place, we'd get all the components and applications in place and installed and demonstrate that it was fully functional and working, and then we would bring in people from our software team to go through use cases and skills transfer for deeper dive information. So as part of that, we assigned Gary Walsh, an IBM technical architect from the software team, and 2 guys, Mohammed and Madeep from IBM SWAT team and Expert Lab Services, to assist and go through those deep dive sessions with CSI, and Ishwar, who I'm still working with today, stepped up to lead the technical team through CSI, and we're still working together on improving all of this all the time. Can't say enough good things about Ishwar. He's, I think the UK guys or US guys say he never sleeps.
I don't think he does.
No, he doesn't sleep.
The sun never sets.
It might have something to do with having a young family as well. I don't know. I don't think I slept so much either. So yeah, phase one really finished in September. Kind of quietened down for Q4 because we're all busy selling things and implementing things and stuff at that time. And we've really kicked off into phase two this year, I would say. Now, throughout that time, throughout that year, we knew through the deep dive sessions why we were doing it. We could see where the world was going, that there was going to be many more containers and the need for this stuff. But what workload, what's the targets, was always there. So I would share my thoughts on that. And I've listed some of the demonstrations, so I would say some of the demonstrations that we were doing, both internally and with customers within IBM at the time. So I was working on a project to deliver .NET 7 on Power. So there's a lot of workload out there on .NET 7 that traditionally hasn't run on Power for 20 odd years or so, that now does. So that's a source of new workload for the Power community. I always think kindly of Pac-Man because that's what the developers of RHACM and whatever would demonstrate, and then you could deploy 30 clusters with Pac-Man running on it and move it around, etc., for your booths and stuff like that. Hopefully not necessarily for the business concept. I think one thing that we do in Montpellier in France is we have a Let's Chat, so it's an instant messaging system. So we have the front end of web-based instant messaging application with a database at the back end. And the key thing I like about this to show people what we can do today is we would maybe run the database on the back end on Power and the front end on x86, but RHACM would then be able to manage both because it was x86 and Power, it would do both. But more than that, we could then move the database from a Power backend and move it onto an x86 backend. A bit like live partition mobility, but just move the location. So really, we can bring workloads from x86 and deliver it on Power and move it around. And for me, the concept around that is put the workload where it fits best. Put it on the right architecture. If there's something that doesn't fit right for Power, put it somewhere else. That's fine. If there's something that's going to work, far better on Power, then put it there. And with all the work that Manoj and the teams have been doing to bring more and more open source and Red Hat software and IBM software together, there's never been so much potential for workload for Power. So the Let's Chat and RHACM demonstration goes through very well. Daniel Casali from the US and myself have been running application modernization workshops, typically 3 or 4 days. We've been going around the world to show that with business partners, and we're starting to do that with customers now too. This is an e-commerce solution built in a containerized environment, but built and designed for x86. I think it's probably 6 or 7 years old, and we show everybody how to port that or how to make that run on Power. Again, a way of new workload coming to Power. And also what our cloud folks have been doing for a long time, Transformation Advisor. So things like MQ and Liberty and Web3 Application Server, as we containerize new applications, this will actually go out and tell a customer how easy or difficult actually a migration to a containerized solution would be. If it's not possible because that isn't available on anymore, maybe it's discontinued or something, that will come back and flag that up. So that gives our expert lab services team a good indication when they go in as part of a discovery phase of how big or small a project or timelines could be. Now, target workloads, cloud native is always there because there's so many more people today building their own applications, right? Development is everywhere. If you don't code, you're nowhere really. So to actually be able to put OpenShift on Power and then the customer to consume that or the developers to consume it, at the end of the day, you don't notice the difference from a development point of view. It's the architects that notice the difference because there's an economics and there's a consolidation benefit, etc. to running on that on Power. Open source. Manoj's colleagues, Garrett runs a team of Power developers which is constantly porting open source products to run on Power. And again, .NET is a prime example of that. So we actually worked with them in the first half of last year to get the open source variant of .NET working for Power, and then we gifted that to Red Hat so that they could actually release that at the back end of last year and offer support for that, whether that be in RHEL or whether that be in OpenShift. And again, that's all new workload opportunity for Power. And of course, our Red Hat friends, we've delivered so much software in the last 2 years, delivering things like Fuse and 3Scale and lots of cloud native workloads, along with IBM Cloud Packs, and last year with Merlin to modernise the development on IBM I. I'm also working with other ISVs in Italy that do similar things. So they've got a container application that automatically converts RPG on IBM I, allowing people with just Java skills to go and modernise IBM I without learning RPG, etc. And we're working with ISVs all the time as well, with Intens and HCL, etc. So lots and lots of opportunities to bring hybrid cloud workload onto Power. And I say we're being completely open about it. A lot of the cloud providers are quite sticky. It's quite difficult to get your data out, or you have to pay to delete it, etc. So we're being very open and saying, look, just put it where it's best, and you shouldn't be tied in there. You should be able to move it wherever you want, whenever you want, and that's the whole purpose of our enterprise hybrid cloud. Really. I'm just flagging up again that CSI have been very good working with us on all new technologies and providing feedback for early adoption programs, and I'll cover that a bit later on. But that's quite important because if we deliver something new and keep it a secret and don't tell anybody, then it's going to take 2 or 3 years before anybody knows about it. So to be able to work with a partner as good as CSI here, then they hit the ground running, and I think business is all about first to market, so it works both ways, I think. So the third part of the session is about actually where are we now. I may have been foolish and thought it all finished last December. We delivered the pilot and that was it. As I said, IT never stands still, right? So current status, this is what we're building at the moment. Ishwar created this slide for me last week from a CSI point of view. They've got CSI Technical Lab domain. They've set up new networks offering to the internet, etc. Put in place high-speed, low-latency call switches to connect all of this up. On the left-hand side, we can see that we've got all the same things that I've been talking about, all the things that we already delivered last year. So this has got OpenShift on Power and on x86. It's got Instana for the application and infrastructure monitoring. It's got Turbonomic to actually optimize all of that. Cloud Pack for AI Ops for all the LPARs and the virtual machines, and RHACM for all of the clusters and multi-architecture containers, etc. So that's all there. Now, I would have liked to have demonstrated all this for you today, because obviously we built it last year and handed it over nearly a year ago. But we've just dismantled some of this to move it around different data centres to build the phase 2. And part of that is a rebalancing between data centres across the UK, etc. So we do have a timeline, and I've just got it on the slide after this perhaps, but there's another TechXchange in Paris at the end of October, and I hope to be able to demonstrate some of this there. There's also an EMEA, a Europe, Middle East and Africa TechXchange in Barcelona in January. So CSI's goal is to have this completed for January to demonstrate and showcase there. Obviously they're open to talking with all customers from day one, and Donn can help facilitate that. I'm here from IBM and well connected with development, with Manoj and offering management and everybody to make sure that these things happen, and to give both CSI partners, customers the full support to get this done. Now, through the back end of last year, Tectrade are also a big storage vendor, and OpenShift and Power works real good with Scale. Okay, Scale, the demonstration that my colleague showed me, whereby he had a restaurant application in New York running at home, and then he would kill it on x86, kill it, and it would start up in AWS on x86 and AWS Cloud. He'd kill that, and then it'd move over to IBM Cloud, but on Power this time. So for me, 4 years ago, that was, this is good. You know, people say containers are about portability and that whole, but you've got to have the right binaries and you've got to be compiled on Power and stuff. You know, with this kind of technology, we can move it from x86 to Power. We can move it from one cloud to the next. And scale is quite fundamental to all that, because that holds the storage and can share it between the different clouds. So we've also got Storage Fusion, appliance-based OpenShift consideration there. So we're actually integrating all of this along with, and I only found this out from my IBM and colleagues and CSI a fortnight ago when I was in the office. We're also implementing IBM Storage Defender as part of this, as well as we're looking to introduce multi-architecture containers. So at the moment we'd have an x86 cluster and we'd have a Power cluster. RHACM sits above that and can manage both clusters, but you've still got both clusters. So multi-architecture clusters would allow us to have x86 and Power nodes within the same cluster. And I'm working with CSI, introducing some of the development team to share where we are status-wise on that. And also, I would expect that we would deliver that as, you know, an early adoption, or, you know, certainly one of the first adopters to include that as part of this package, because there's a lot of stuff here and it's all in one place, and you can go and talk to a lot of customers, and a lot of customers will be interested in parts of it. Not everybody has to be interested in all of it, but, you know, with IBM or with CSI, when you've got it all there, then it opens that conversation up to say, well, this is the art of the possible. This is what we can do. We are not in the 1980s. We are not in the 1990s. We can do all this today. So we're working with multi-architecture clusters, and also we do a lot of work in the finance sector. So we're looking to partner on confidential containers as well. So these are the things probably which will be keeping me busy for next year. But, you know, they're just around the corner. But we'll be delivering that this year. And then, you know, be out doing more implementations of it, I'm sure, and, you know, maybe talking about this at TechXchange next year on how we deliver these extra things. So, just calling out that we've got the 2 tech exchanges over the other side of the water. I'll be talking with CSI, will be co-presenting this session with me at both of those. I'll be running other sessions and hands-on labs. I've got a hands-on lab for .NET on Power tonight, 5 till 6:30. My colleague Daniel is running application modernisation, where we port that Suckshop, that e-commerce, from an x86 designed container e-commerce solution. We make that run on Power. And we're also running OADP backup hands-on labs as well. So there's plenty of hands-on labs along with the higher level that I'm sharing with you today. So with that, we're here to help you. Don, obviously, more than happy, I'm sure, to talk to any amount of customers about this stuff. I'm here to support Don and the UK CSI team and all of you. And you know, as part of that, I get my support from, you know, guys like Manoj, who's making this happen, running the teams to make it happen. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. I probably won't be able to. I'll give it a go. But other than that, just thank you all for your time today. I hope it was useful. I appreciate any feedback that you might have for us.
Great job, Paul. Thank you. Any questions?
How many people do you have working on
Oh, how many projects? you mean the CSI project?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it feels like it's me.
And actually, you kind of, I hate to use the word container, but you almost have to containerize the projects themselves, because there's lots of overlap. I participate in a weekly call every Friday morning with my UK colleagues, specifically talking about storage fusion. So hopefully everybody in here is Fusion, at least partially aware of what that is. So Tectrade CSI have been leaning in on Fusion relative to learning how to containerize, leveraging OpenShift, and so what we're trying to accomplish is actually setting up, leveraging the lab environment to set up an environment on both sides of the water, a lab here in the US, a lab in the UK, and then you connect them together and get to do very fun things that way. I mean, Paul's already alluded to this, and I just want to make sure it's absolutely crystal clear. These are fun science experiments, but really they go way beyond science experiments. We're actually doing more than just demonstrating the technology. We're actually trying to ensure that customers understand that this is enterprise-ready technology. By pushing the envelope, we have the ability to be able to show it's capable of doing all of these things, ergo there's probably applicability somewhere in your environment today. And by demonstrating the capabilities, we are also, thanks to IBM and our own and their willingness to partner with us, learning the technology for your benefit. And so that's really the goal there. And so, I mean, again, if we want to talk about the teams, the resources, the capabilities, has been, I think, a substantial investment on the part of CSI and Tectrade, but as well a substantial investment on the part of IBM in partnership with us to help us to develop these technologies together. So I've been incredibly grateful to be a participant in this effort, and extremely grateful to Paul and his team for everything that they've done on our behalf. So thank you.
So looking back to last year, I'm not sure which project or which part of it you might be referring to. I couldn't count on the whole thing.
I should have just said Kurt. Yeah.
So last year we had Turbonomic and Instana provided skills transfer to IBM Lab Services team. So there was key people. So there was 2 US guys that connected remotely to do the first setup of Instana and Turbo. I think we had skills in the UK that were already doing the RHACM stuff, and the Watson for AI Ops we keyed into Jay Carman from the Power Development team that's working in that space. But I've got to bite my tongue, because I say it's a small part. It's not a small part, right? It's key and very important, but it was a case of they would come in, and over the course of a week or two they would get that done and then go out. So it was actually quite key that I retained a guy called Namdi, who was relatively new. I mean, I met him as a graduate, joining IBM, but he was there. He was, for me, he was the glue. He was the sticky part, because he stayed on the lab services on the project. I was maybe more experienced, so I made sure it was documented. We knew where it was going, because these things get lost, right? Otherwise. Yeah. But when we took the skills from these other people and fed into Namdi, then he held on to those skills. So then when CSI would want questions and stuff, that we were able to provide the answers to those ourselves. Right now, I would say, and all the way through this, I've led it from an IBM point of view. I partner with our software team and then with the ecosystem team, if that's through the channel. That's obviously where the software defender stuff has come in from, and I was talking with the storage friends about integrating Fusion and stuff all through last year. So we were waiting for the hardware to arrive, and that was just connected up in the last 2 weeks or so.
Yep.
I mean, originally I was talking, the original key sponsor was a head of cloud, which is a new for me. And if I think 3 years ago, and I was going to be talking to head of cloud ex-Gartner, I wouldn't really have expected that. And I don't think he expected it, or was actually too thrilled to be doing it in the first instance. But I think it was that first webinar that we did. It was so successful, and it opened his eyes to what we could do and see. And it's just gone from strength to strength. Whenever we've had new people join the project, it's been like, oh yeah, this is going on. And as you learn more, then it's just built more and more momentum over that period of time, which has been great to see. Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you for the question.
Anybody else doing anything like this? Maybe on a smaller scale, or desires to do so, or anything at all?
How many of you are looking at Fusion right now, or have it on your roadmap for something that you're supposed to be taking a look at, or you've already been asked by your manager or otherwise?
And then I just come here more of a technical mindset, so that is just, what you're doing is different, but I'm just curious as how you built and
Yep.
keep this thing going.
Yep.
Very, very interesting work.
I didn't really cover it, I don't think, We should have done, but at the beginning of the year, the idea of, so we've got two phase twos really. The phase two is looking at the use cases and providing the deeper skills transfer. But actually it grew into something bigger than that for this year, because it grew into the real 2.0 version, was about creating software appliances and including Instana and Turbonomic for onboarding customers. But also, it was multi-purpose. We wanted to build something that could be used for demonstrations, but also for customer proof of concepts. Now the trouble is, when you've got something for demonstrations, these things tend to get broken, right? So it doesn't really bode well if you're doing demonstrations, things break, and then you want to do a proof of concept, for instance. So that led into the point CSI are doing a lot with DevOps and automation, and we've done a lot with Ansible with them as well. So the view was, okay, we deployed all this and we made it all happen as a hybrid cloud last year, but now we want to terraform that and Ansible it. So you just hit the one button, and instead of it deploying a server, now it deploys an hybrid cloud. It does a whole lot.
Yeah.
So that's part of the work that's ongoing now, and being able, partly we were rejigging, rebalancing hardware around data centers, but also it gave us that opportunity to actually get the DevOps team and the automation team in to make that possible.
Paul brings up a fantastic point, which is not only is this an opportunity to learn and to develop these technologies for the benefit of our customers, but it's actually the means through which customers will enjoy the benefits of the products and technologies themselves. We're only clicks away from being able to take this environment into production. Remember, as I mentioned to you before, Tectrade and CSI at its core is a managed services company. So what we ultimately want to get to is the ability for a customer to tell us, this is what I need. And then we can actually say, well, these are the ways in which you can consume it. You can consume it as an on-premises product, technology. You can also consume it as a service. But we can only say that service element if, in fact, we've gone through the hard labor of figuring out how all the components fit together. And being able to demonstrate that not only that they work together, but actually understand all the mechanisms through which that has to be accomplished. All of the work that's been done between the two companies has really set the foundation for that capability. There are a lot of people who are talking about these products at a very high level, but I believe the ability to have that flexibility of deployment, going back to that provision capability we were talking about earlier, is really one of the things that sets all of this effort apart. We are ultimately trying to give our customers the ability to be able to say, I don't want to touch this. I want you to own this for me, or I want you to partner with me to deploy this together so that I can focus on my core while you deliver on yours. And that's really the foundation, I think, of the partnership between Tectrade, CSI, and IBM for the benefit of our mutual customers.
And again, I've got a real world example of that, whereby a CSI customer has traditionally been working on power, and then they've got a side avenue, as part of modernisation, they've been working in public cloud. Now, over a multi-year experience, I've been aware of it for 3 years. It must have been going on for longer than that. They're now ramping up and doing more in cloud, and as they're ramping up, they're seeing performance issues, and part of that is probably to do with latency issues around and about. Now, because we've been working together for the last 2 years on this, and they're fully aware of the Instana piece, so they've wheeled in Instana software as a service to look at that, to identify where the problem is. Of course, I'm saying, if we put that on OpenShift next to the data in the first place, you wouldn't have those latency issues. Okay, so this is what we've been talking about, and this is the reasons you should maybe consider moving some of that workload closer to the data. But as Donn says, the fact that we're talking about this, we're collaborating, we're making it the first instance, they were aware that they could use Instana to go off and identify that. And that may or may not lead to them to then moving that front-end data closer to the back end to resolve some of their issues. But, it's all good stuff.
Fantastic.
How are we doing for time?
Very nice. Right on time.
Right on time. I don't know how that happens.
Thanks for watching this replay. Get in touch with Tectrade, CSI, Donn or myself if we can provide any further help.